Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And it's Monday, it's June the 15th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And just real quickly before I forget, I'll remind you as the week goes on, but I'll be taking off all next week. Next week's my annual pilgrimage to Brazil, so I'll be out of the country for a couple of days. Actually, about one trading week, basically. I'll be gone Monday through Friday of next week. Um, so if you don't see any chart lessons and I'm a little slow to reply to emails, you will understand why. Because I'm not here, and I will be able to check. Generally, I can check my email while I'm there and take care of any emergency type things, but I probably won't answer any trading questions or anything like that. I'll only answer, something that's emergency type situation. So if you'll hold your emails starting on Friday until and all that next week, that would be great. If it's something critical, by all means, send it to me. But if it's a trading question or just some general question, if you could hold it, that will help me not get so far behind while I'm gone for a week. But anyway, let's talk about today's chart and today's trading. There was a gap. This is where the market closed on Friday. This is where it opened on Sunday evening, which is really the overnight for today's trading. So you notice there's a gap there. And generally, the market will try to fill that gap quickly. So my first impression this morning was that we would probably try to trade higher and fill that gap. Now, nothing's ever written in stone, and if the market's really weak, it could take months or, days, weeks, or months before that gap right there is filled. But generally, uh, a gap will be filled on the same day, or at least the market will attempt to. We still got maybe 50 minutes left in today's trading day. Not a lot of time, so I'll be surprised unless we suddenly shoot higher here that this is going to be filled today. But I'm guessing before tomorrow gets here, we'll probably have filled that gap. We'll just have to see what happens. Um, but immediately that put me on the alert this morning that we probably were going to try to trade higher. And it looked like we were going to fill it real quickly right here when this took off. But still, we're finding very strong resistance right there around the 2078 area, which is basically going to be this high. And if you look across those closes, that is still missed that by a tick or so right there of getting up there. Um, but yeah, just be aware of those gaps. And a lot of times there's one from the overnight to the regular session that will be filled as well. But you won't see those on a 24-hour chart. You have to understand the difference between. Let me just give you an example. The market opened at 8:30 right in here somewhere. Let me find the actual opening. It was this bar right here. So um, even if there wasn't the overnight gap, when the market opened here at 8:30, if you're only looking at a regular session chart, there would be a gap between there and there. And those are generally filled as well. So it's not as, it doesn't happen as strongly in theory as it did in the old days when there wasn't 24-hour trading. This gap is much more noticeable and important than the gap between here and there on the regular session, but they're still, you need to know about them and know that they generally try to fill those gaps pretty quickly and kind of give you a bias where the prices are probably going to head for the day. You don't want to trade on any probablys though. You want to know exactly what's going to happen and follow the price action like always. But that would be I had a couple of targets here. The first target was coming back and testing this breakout area here, which is around 2074, 75 area. And then my next target would have been these highs right here, and then the next target right here. And you figure you're going to probably find resistance at each of those places. Look where the first resistance was on the way up, right in that area. It did shoot higher, and it came back, and we kind of got hung up across there with the next resistance, this area right across here. And so far, we haven't been able to get through there, and the market has just really slowed down considerably now. So um, I'd be surprised if we make it, but you just never know what'll happen. Sometimes the last 10 minutes of trading, the market can rocket off. So um, you never say never. But anyway, let's talk about the trades. When I came in, we had a downtrend working. Um, Notice this tight channel working down here. Let me back out a little bit, make it a little bigger. And I drew it off the first two swings. And this was a failed second entry long. It's a bounce off that low, but it's also, you can also treat this like a um, breakout pullback short as well, from that little double bottom there. Um, but this is a trap. Notice the new high pullback. There's actually a little tick up right there, but I just consider that a first entry pullback, second entry. And on a slightly larger chart, you wouldn't see that little tick up. Um, it's almost ignorable, because you pretty much got a little more than a measured move down to here, to be honest. Um, let's just measure it and we'll look at it together. You can see we went just a tad bit longer, and so you would expect that to bounce. So when it turned up and turned right back down, that's, you want to go short right there. And this turned out, you don't know that it's going to do this, but turns out to be a great trade. If you had any runners, they were safe. If you were trading runners, and you can ride this all the way down till you get your break here. And notice this right here. There's your first two swings. This confirmed the trend. Notice how it did back up and fill the gap, but notice how it closed on its high and then opened on its very low. A lot of times it won't tick back, but this one did. But notice how it jumped over that. It gaps over that line. I've shown you those before, and there's been a lot of debate about whether it's just a coincidence, but I can assure you it's not a coincidence. It's nothing critical to trading, but it just lets you know your trend lines are in the right place. It's very common for those things to bounce over those trend lines, so just pay attention to them. There's another one right there. Look at that, how it gaps right over that trend line, and that one didn't back up. And I want to say there was one other one somewhere today. I can't remember where the other one was, but anyway, there's one right there. There's this one right here. Oh, there's the other one right there. Look how we're going up, and it jumps right over it. And so you can't tell me that's a coincidence. There's something to it. Maybe it's the fact that the trend line's there, so there's not a lot of orders there. And generally, that's what causes the orders are thin, and so prices just kind of go right past it because there's not a lot of orders there. But you'll see that over and over. And a lot of times, if you're not sure about your trend line and it runs right through one of those, that's a good indication you've probably got it right. So I see those and I pay attention to them. Again, there's nothing earth-shattering or earth-breaking about them, but needless to say, if you see them, pay attention to them. And then we're moving down, and we finally get a break right here. We've been moving down without coming back to the EMA for a long time, so you figure it's probably close. Notice the new low, pull back first entry, pull back second entry, but this kind of went into a little trading range, and you got a little failed break higher. So, and even though that looks like a doji, it could have easily closed. It's just ticking up and back and forth as the bar closes. On yours, it could closed on the low. Yours, it might have closed somewhere else, but that's close enough right there. I like going short right there. That's a second entry short, and then you get a second entry off the high. And this is a little breakout pullback short right here as well. And you want to look for at least a measured move similar to that one down. And we got a little more than that. There's actually a failed second entry long there, but you basically got to go low at the short of the day, you got to go short at the low of the day right there. And I think that's a little too risky when you've already had a couple of really good trades here. So just kind of ride that one out. If you did use a limit order, it probably would have worked. If you used a stop, I think you would have been in trouble. And that's why I don't like those, going short right there. Your entry would have been 50, and you would have been a couple of ticks short there. Um, it was tempting to go long right there, but I think you're better off to wait and make sure prices are going to push up through the trend line, or not the trend line, the EMA there. And notice how we did, and we pull back, and you get a little trap. And so you get a second entry long counting off this low. That's your first move up, pull back. So there's your second move up. And again, you're looking for probably a measured move. And we don't quite get a measured move, but I think we're close. We actually went a little further than, maybe not. Get it just right. Yeah, we actually went one tick more than a measured move. It doesn't look it, but it's, it's why I like to use those, because it gives you a target, a fair target. And but nice second entry. I did draw this one in green because it's not the trap that we like to see, or the um, failed second entry short or whatever. Um, then you get a pullback right here. Pullback first entry, pullback second entry, and there was you could almost treat this like a failed second entry short, but if you had it, you would have got trapped. That's why you don't want to probably enter right here. If this would have went higher and or been a better signal bar, maybe, or if but we weren't back to the trend line, and sometimes you got to worry about that. But when it turned back up on that second entry, about coming right off that new trend line after the new, now look at this, you're coming down, you got your break, you got two measured legs down to a new low. You're looking for the thing to maybe reverse, or at least correct for a little while. And when I say correct, it might just be a trading range like so. You don't necessarily have to go higher. You might just go in a range for a while, but that's generally going to last for about an hour. And and then the market will either continue the trend or do something different. But anyway, nice bounce, and then you get another bounce right off the trend line. Notice that's a little bit higher than that, so pull back first entry, pull back second entry. So that's a second entry long, again right off the trend line, and it did break lower and then go out the top. Um, these are the ones I like to add on, because then it tried to come back again. You definitely don't want to be going short there, even though that looks like a long trap. You don't have any reason to be going short yet. You don't have a break of the trend line. So when it breaks lower right there and fails, you want to go long. That was a quick, easy scalp. Uh, it took a little bit longer to get your little breakout pullback long and take off. But this is one of those where I doubled up, and just this one trade here made me a pretty good, tidy sum. And I didn't even get any runners out of it. But, you double up right there when it turned higher, because now you got a new low, you got a failed second entry short. And it's right off the trend line, no less. Then it pulls back, gives you a first entry, pull back, and then another second entry long right there. And this one hesitated just a second, and then suddenly it burst off. And any runners would have been safe. And it pulls back, and it gives you another entry right here, right off this little short, this new trend line on the steeper trend that's working up. And all this is just a shorter term channel within the bigger channel here. And I did circle this one green. It's a first entry, but it's a nice bullish bar right off of that trend line, and it does take off. You probably had to use a limit order. You probably wouldn't have time to get your stop in, so you probably had to let it tick up and then drop a limit order in there and get filled that way. Actually, while it was backing up, you might have got a stop in there in time, but then now you got two legs up here, and you correct pretty hardly. It's pulling back first entry, pulling back, and then you get a second entry. Even though that looks really bearish, if you're paying attention, you know that trend line is there. There's been no break of it yet. I definitely would probably try to use a limit order here, and you could have gotten filled all the way back to one tick above that low right there, maybe even right at that low. But because that's not a great signal bar. It's not complete. It's not bearish, but it's not real strong bullish either. But these are the kind that will fool a lot of people. So even if you waited till here to enter, I'd be okay with that. And it does take on off, because this is your main trend line. You would think it would might come back and test it one more time, but after that big move up, it was still fairly bullish, and um, this big sell-off fools a lot of people. So then it pulls back, and it just kind of goes flat here. Um, it's tempting to enter right here, but definitely not without a good signal bar. And but then it comes back and it gives you a second entry long right there. Pull back first entry, pull back second entry. Um, so you get a nice second entry long right there, and it is off the trend line now. Then it pulls back and it gives you another second entry long here. This is the first break of the bigger channel here, but it's a second entry, and look how bullish that is. And prices really are right off of this low where we've bounced a couple times already. And you're looking for prices to make a new high at a very minimum. And you see they run up and make a quick high, and you think it might sell off, but it kind of gets hung. It's still, you got this channel now, and I think most people are looking at the channel rather than the trend any longer. And you do get that little trap right there. It turns down, turns back up, and there's a little trend line working up there. And you figure it's probably coming back to here to test this highs of this little trading range. And that's what it does. And then you get a failed second entry long there. Um, you know, I'm probably okay with you going short right there because you've got your break and your new high of the main one. And this is a trading range, and it's obvious that strong support, and there is a trap. So if you wanted to go short right there, I'm okay with that one. And let's go ahead and mark it. And I think that gets us into the 2 o'clock hour. Yep, that takes you into the 2 o'clock hour by the time this next one. This one's a little bit suspect because of all that overlap anyway. You can see we closed right dead the center of that two-tier trading range. But the channel still played out. You had your break, moved to a new high. But even though the channel stayed in play, and it would have been, it actually was almost tempting to go short right there, but I think you needed to wait on the trap because this thing had been up for a long time. But when you got that long trap and it's right off those highs of that range again, I'm okay with figuring that prices are, you know, the odds tell you prices are coming back to here. And then guess where they're going from here once they come down here? Back to here. And then where do you think they're going to go from there? They're going to try to come back down here, but we ran out of time. So that's what I saw today. Fairly straightforward day. Um, Nothing too hard to find. This was fairly easy to find. This trend up was uncomplicated. It was a little bit, if you're not real experienced, you might have had a little trouble figuring out where the highs of it was at. Earlier, I thought it was probably right in here or right here, but when we shot higher, you got to assume it's up here, and then of course the midline fits right in there, so you know that you got it right. And turns out to be a nice two-tiered channel working higher, and it met the rules. A lot of times you'll get a second leg up. We didn't get that, and I really thought we might get a second leg up and fill that gap, but it didn't happen. So we just got hung up in this range, but it wasn't very hard to figure that range out either. If you're not seeing those things, you just need to keep studying your chart and practicing and doing this each day, because the more experience you get, I'm still surprised at how the longer you do this and the more you study it, the better you get. It's amazing how good you can get at reading this stuff. It really is. You'll still get fooled because you'll get, most likely, if no for no other reason, then you'll get overconfident in your abilities. That's what generally trips me up, is I get overconfident and I think I'm smarter than the market, and I get humbled again. And once I get humbled once, and I go back to doing the right things. But somebody sent me an email today. I'm gonna see if I still. Yeah, I do. This gentleman sent me his chart. He says, I went back to the basics today. I only took one trade today, but was watching the chart all day and seeing the trades happen. He tells me to feel free to share this chart if I want to so others can learn. Um, what I learned today is that when you move away from a proven system, the market will punish you. So obviously, he did something, he probably went and read something somewhere and it sounded great and he tried it and guess what? It wasn't so great. Um, like usual. And, don't try to change what we do. Don't try to add anything to it because for most people, all you're going to do is just ensure that you lose money. You can't reinvent the wheels, what I try to tell people. And we've got this down to a science. We've already tried everything you want to try with it. So it works, and there's just no need to want to make changes with it. And just so you can see his chart, he's pretty much got all the same trades that I had. In the day chart, total 10 easy Mack trades. So instead of trying to overcomplicate things and add things and take things away, if you learn how to follow the rules, and you can see he drew his trend lines, he's got his short-term trend lines in here, he's got his bigger channels, he's got it perfect. And I mean, it was a fairly easy day for the most part if you just wait and follow the rules and be patient. And you see he was patient in here. This is the way I originally had mine drawn, but I moved it up and then found a new mid and used this for my midpoint, this higher point here. So he saw the same thing I saw, basically. Um, so very good. And but that's your story for the day about what happens when you try to change things and do things different. And I'm just as guilty. I've done, in the day I did the same thing. You learned. That's one of the positives of getting punished when you make mistakes is that it hurts, and it hurts in your pocket, it hurts in your pride, and it hurts all around. And so, when you make those mistakes enough, if the smarter traders get wise and say, I'm not going to do that anymore, and they don't. But some people will make the same mistake over and over and over and over, and it's just like banging your head against a wall. And, if you bang your head against the wall and it hurts, most people stop. But for whatever reason with trading, they bang their head against the wall trading, and it hurts. But for whatever reason, they can't stop. They keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different outcome. And I know because I've been there. And really, what happens is that those things they try will work once or twice. It'll work just enough to keep you thinking, if I keep working on this, I can make it work. But in the long run, it's a losing proposition, and it's the old definition of insanity. Um, Insanity is doing the same thing every time and getting the same outcome, but expecting something different. So don't try to change things up. Just make if you just do what we teach, and of course it's not easy. You don't learn it overnight, and that's what happens to most people. That's the key to what happens in trading is that people they don't stick with anything long enough to learn it. They'll read my manual or somebody else's manual, and they'll take one or two trades, and maybe one or two of them work, and then one or two of them lose, and they say, well, this doesn't work, and they move on to the next thing. Well, they didn't stay with the first thing long enough to really even get a good grasp of it, and they're already working on the next thing. And then that one doesn't work, and so they move on to another one, and then that one doesn't, and they just jump around from one thing to the next. Well, yes, it takes a while to learn to read this price action and to draw your trend lines properly and all. But the one thing I can't tell you about this strategy, if you stay with it and you keep persevering and you don't give up and you follow the rules, eventually it'll work. And, but you got to hang in there. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a few weeks. It's probably not even going to happen in a few months. It might even take a few years. But The only way to be able to make money in the long run is to understand what prices are doing here. Otherwise, you're just gambling, and we're not gamblers. You don't make any money gambling in the markets. Go ask a gambler; they'll tell you can't gamble in the markets and make money. Yeah, you might get lucky occasionally, and the dart accidentally hit the right place, and you make a nice little haul. But in the long run, you'll give it back. And so the key is staying with it until long enough to learn it. And it just takes a long, long time. But it's my opinion that anybody that makes money, even if they don't call it price action trading, they have stayed with it long enough that they have an understanding of how prices work. And they have a good feel for how to read this chart. Now, they may have some other tools they throw in there with it, but the bottom line is you don't need all that. Everything you need is right here on this chart. Your volume, your direction, your trend, everything. You can learn everything you need to know from this one chart right here. You don't need multiple charts. You don't need all these indicators. You don't need all that mess. All it does is distract you and cause you to second guess yourself. And you don't need that. You need to be confident, and you need to recognize the setup when you see it and take it confidently. And if you're wrong, then you misread it, and you don't let that wrong trade bother you. You jump back in the next time you see one, and you make it right back. And if you, it's just no other way to do this. I can assure you. You can try all the magic bullets. You can try all the holy grails. You can try all the sure thing indicators, but you're just wasting your time and your money until you learn to read this chart. Whether you learn it based on how I teach it or somebody else, the bottom line, if you want to be a profitable trader, you got to learn to read this chart in real time. First thing you got to be able to do is read it after the fact at the end of the day, and then work from there to start. It'll get to where you can glance at your chart at the end of the day and you can see all this real quickly. It'll take a while in the beginning. I mean, I used to look and think, how in the world could anybody ever know that prices were going to trade down this hard and then rally the rest of the day? But now it's almost like knowing the back of your hand. I mean, you get experienced at it. You understand what's really happening. You understand how to read it. It's not easy. It doesn't come overnight, but it can be done, and that's the only way you're ever going to make money. So that's enough of the Mack soapbox for today. I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to do this through Thursday, and then I'm going to be out of the country all next week, so I'll continue to remind you of that. But I hope you had a good trading day. We'll look forward to having a good week. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. But I'm done for today. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.